here. It's like, I mean, I did a bunch of the same kind of math competitions that he did. I had this like super hardcore math instructor in high school. His name was Zooming Fung. And he, and
Chinese guy?
Oh yeah. And,
Hello, I'm Zooming Fong. This is Rubin Report, April 29th, 2025. We are live streaming as always on Rumble, YouTube, and Locals. Share, subscribe, tap that notification bell. Post-game show, rubinreport.locals.com. And yes, I know we are going to have a lot of Canadians tuning into the program today, and it is not a great day for Canada at all. The Liberals will remain in charge of your government, and may God help you. Really, like, this is bad stuff. We are going to get to that. The Canadian election, of course, was yesterday. Mark Carney, I would say Trudeau in just kind of a more middle-aged, average body, is now going to be the prime minister, and all of the bad stuff, the woke stuff, the globalist stuff, the endless jihad, the gender stuff, it seems like it's just going to be put on steroids. And maybe, I'm seeing a lot of people say Donald Trump really made a mistake by going so hard on Canada because it galvanized support for the left. We'll get into that and a bunch more, but it's just not. It reminded me this morning when I woke up and I saw the results, because I wasn't looking at Twitter last night. I saw the results this morning, and the feeling that I first had when I saw that he won, and it did look like it as the day went by, that it was going to be the Liberals winning, was the exact feeling I had the night that the recall in California to recall Gavin Newsom, and I was obviously campaigning with Larry Elder to get him to fix the state, and it went horribly awry also. It's the same feeling, like a feeling of just kind of hopelessness. And I'm seeing a lot of tweets this morning, and I got a bunch of emails and stuff, people that are just feeling like, man, they've lost their country. But obviously a certain set of people want that. So we're going to do plenty on that. We're also going to focus a little bit on the deportation and immigration stuff, because the game has been ramped up. There's sort of the literal stuff happening on the ground with the deportations, and then there's the kayfabe TV version of the game that is being played, and the Trump administration is really going at it and doing some really, really good things. Then we will talk about someone, I did not know of this guy until yesterday, but he's trying to impeach Trump. They've got a new guy, and he's quite a character, to say the least. And of course, we'll wrap it up the way I like to, which is just with a little sanity. So let's just dive right in. We will start over at the MSNBC 13 network, where, as always, they are very upset about illegals being kicked out of the country, and never upset about you, the citizen of the United States, who maybe is being stabbed or burned or pushed into a subway or having your house looted or some other rather unpleasant thing. Enjoy.
Brought to you by MSNBC 13. If there's an illegal alien criminal out there, we have their back.
The White House has put up about 100 posters of what they say are unauthorized immigrants who have been arrested for violent crimes. You can see them there. They put them up on the driveway of the White House. If you look here, that's the West Wing just at the forefront, the executive mansion itself to the left. But what's particularly noteworthy about this location is it is right directly behind the positions where TV correspondents do their hits from the White House lawn. So therefore, no matter what network you're on, that includes MSNBC, if you're doing a hit from the White House right now, those pictures will be behind you. The White House doing a briefing in about a half hour about what they're doing.
Oh no, those pictures of illegal criminal aliens who did bad things like selling fentanyl and raping and murdering. And I think, Connor, we've got some close-ups of some of the images of some of the people. These are not good guys, murderers. She looks like a lovely, is that a man or a woman? Little of both, whatever it is. Distribution of fentanyl. These are people, murder you can see there, attacking children. Oh, there's rape. There's another murder. There's a bunch of stuff there. Not great people. But what is MSNBC more concerned about? Did MSNBC cover any of those crimes when they were bringing in, can you show me that person again? Is that a man or a woman? You just can't tell these. It's a woman. It's not the prettiest woman, but it's a woman nonetheless. Why is it that when this woman, whoever that is, was distributing fentanyl in the streets of the United States, why is it that MSNBC didn't cover that? Now that she's being kicked out of the country, they're very upset. But this does get to the kayfabe, the TV version of all this, that we're sort of in this play. And the Trump team, this is Trump 101. They know how to play this thing absolutely perfectly. What do? You want to draw attention to it? Let's put the pictures of the criminal, illegal aliens who were bringing drugs and mayhem and murder and rape into our streets. Let's put them where the TV people are. So even MSNBC, who ignored all of the crimes in the first place, will actually have to cover it. It continues over there. This is, Phoenix, roll up for me a little bit. This is Voto Latino President Maria Teresa Kumar, and she's very upset. She wants you to blur those images. We shouldn't see, look, I didn't want to see that picture of that woman, so maybe she makes a point here, but it's seeing these people that really is the problem.
We don't know if they've had due process. We don't know if, in fact, these individuals do have a rap sheet. So I would encourage those individuals that have that as a backshot to blur those people out. The job of journalism is to ensure that we are presenting the facts. The press right now, we are absolutely under attack. Our job is always to have our true north, to make sure that we're presenting balanced news, and making sure that we are not putting folks that are potentially in danger. And having that representation of those pictures in the background, we can't allow that to basically for us to carry the water of potentially innocent people. So I would encourage, I recognize live shots are tough, but I would encourage folks to actually make sure that those shots are blurred to the best of your abilities.
You suck, lady. You people think you have anything to do at MSNBC or any of these places, anything to do at this point with the true north and finding out what the truth is? No, you're all propagandists. There's literally no evidence. And by the way, if some evidence presents itself today, I will gladly cover it tomorrow that any of those people are innocent. There is no evidence. We checked before. If someone there is innocent, then it is worth it's worth finding out that information and them not being included in some sort of crime outside of illegal immigration that they might have done, right? Obviously. But this is interesting because, as I pointed out, they didn't care about any of the crimes that these people did. But you could also take a zillion other examples of this. Why is it that when basically a failed actor, Jussie Smollett, a couple of years ago pretended that two giant black men attacked him and with MAGA hats and a noose said, "This is Trump country." And I think they had a Subway sandwich or something. It was a whole to-do. Why is it that MSNBC ran with that? Why is it that Kamala Harris still has a tweet up talking about how this proves white supremacy in the country? And it turned out to be a complete hoax. He literally paid these two brothers, I think they turned out to be gay brothers, to do this. I don't mean brothers like brother. I mean brothers. They were both brothers with each other, same parents. But they ran with that. But somehow, murderer, show me that lady one more time. We should really be concerned with that lady. That lady is the poster child of the people we should be concerned with. She was distributing fentanyl on the streets, looks a little constipated. She is now the hero of the left. It continues with Jake Tapper.
The Trump administration is approaching its first 100-day mark with a full court press on the issue of illegal immigration, and they really don't want you to miss it. So they subtly and tastefully deck the White House North Lawn with dozens of yard signs featuring photos of people that the Trump administration claims are in the country illegally, each poster saying arrested and listing the alleged offensive with which they have been charged. CNN's working to confirm the identities and if there are actual allegations against these people. Until then, we are blurring their identities.
Oh, yes, because you're such a good journalist, Jake. I know you have a book coming out next month and you're going to do a whole press junket and make a lot of money telling people about how Biden had a compromised mental state, and yet somehow you didn't cover it for 4 years. But you're such a good journalist that now that we're arresting fentanyl dealers and murderers and rapists, you're the good guy, so you're gonna blur out their pictures. I love how, and you can see also, like, I know you have to be kind of dumb and like whacked over the head, which most of their viewers are, to believe anything that they're saying. But that when he does this little thing, they subtly and tastefully put those things out. you can see he's saying, I'm a Democrat. I don't like that they did this. But Jake, once again, I would welcome you to go through those, how many? It's about 100, I think they said, about 100 of those things. How about, Jake, you spend, if you did 10 seconds on each one, and there's 100 of them, right? Do the math, Jake. You could spend 10 seconds on each one saying what those people did. Why don't you could blur out their faces and just say the crime and say what city it was in. How about you do that? Or how about you interview some of the victim of some of the crime? How about a kid, maybe, a parent of a kid who maybe died of fentanyl from that rather unpleasant looking woman? Could you do that, Jake? Or are you really just concerned that actually the Trump administration knows how to beat you clowns? And another way they know how to do it is by hiring the right people. And White House spokesperson Karoline Leavitt, I would say, is a prime example of
Today, we kick off 100-day week with a focus on the president's historic effort to secure our southern border. Later this afternoon, President Trump will sign an executive order on law and order and another executive order on sanctuary cities. The first EO will strengthen and unleash America's law enforcement to pursue criminals and protect innocent citizens. The second EO is centered around protecting American communities from criminal aliens, and it will direct the Attorney General and Secretary of Homeland Security to publish a list of state and local jurisdictions that obstruct the enforcement of federal immigration laws.
The president recently said when it comes to facilitating his release, he's leaving that up to his lawyer. So just to be clear, have there been any negotiations between the U.S. and El Salvador over his release or facilitating his release?
I will tell you what the president of El Salvador told all of you in the Oval Office. El Salvador does not intend to smuggle a designated foreign terrorist back into the United States. He is an El Salvadorian national. That is his home country. That is where he belongs.
She's just so good, like that, whoever that quote unquote journalist is, like, okay, the question was fine, but it's like they literally are still trying to get El Salvador to kick an El Salvadorian or Salvadorian resident out and send him illegally back into the United States. It makes no sense. As for the executive actions, the second one, she didn't give much information on the first one, but the second one is the interesting one because, you know, we covered yesterday these activist judges now that are instructing state workers, and it was the governor of Wisconsin instructing state workers not to cooperate with ICE. And what we're going to see is a great sorting right now. We've been seeing quite a sorting for quite some time, I would say, which is the red state, blue state divide. And there will be some places where law and order is maintained, some places where if you're an illegal, you're going to be caught and deported. Florida, we found 800 illegals about a week ago, 780 of them to be exact. They were all handed over to ICE because DeSantis instructed our local law enforcement to work with ICE, and now they're gone. And that is good. They shouldn't have been here, even if a few of them were nice people. It's illegal to come to a country illegally. But the sorting will be that there will be functional places, and then there will be places largely like Minnesota, like Wisconsin, obviously like California, probably New York, where now the state governments are not doing what they are supposed to do, which is basically preserve a system that would allow their citizens to pursue happiness. It's kind of like that, right? We can all talk about what the government's supposed to do in a bigger sense, but basically the bare minimum that a government should do is provide a little bit of law and order so you can go about your day, go about your life without being killed or threatened or something like that. Now, we clearly don't have that in a lot of blue states and cities at the moment. So this is a case where you could say that the federal government and the state governments are at loggerheads, right? They're banging against each other. Federal government saying, hey, we've taken control of the border. We're in charge of immigration. States, certain states saying, no. We want as many of these illegals here. We still want sanctuary cities like Mayor of Boston, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have to decide as a citizen if you want to live in one of those places. And then I think we have to decide as a country, are we going to back a president trying to do exactly what he promised he was going to do when he was running? Or are we going to back a bunch of radicals that don't seem to care about you very much? Tom Homan, the man who will play Tom Homan in the movie about Tom Homan called The Tom Homan Story, made an appearance on television calling himself Tom Homan, and here it is.
In 40 years of doing this job, people always want to say, why are you so emotional when you testify? Why are you so emotional on network? Because if they wore my shoes for 40 years, they'd understand why I'm emotional. I've talked to little girls as young as 9 years old that were raped multiple times by the cartel members. And then when you get to your knees and you talk to that little girl and everything innocent and pure has been ripped from her, when you listen to the Laken Riley, 17 minutes, that young lady fighting for her life, Don't just think, okay, a young woman died. Think of how she died, the terror that she went through, and these children that are sexually assaulted. I stood in back of a tractor trailer and 19 dead people at my feet that baked to death. Illegal immigration is not a victimless crime. And so every sick person we take off the streets, especially child rapists, it makes this country much safer. Every illegal alien we arrest, public safety threat, one at a time, makes this country safer.
Do you think he's the bad guy in this equation? Now, he talks kind of gruffly and directly. He just explained why. He has seen some shit. He has lived through some shit. He has talked to those girls who've been raped. Like, it's unimaginable, a 9-year-old girl that's been raped, or he's seen a carload of people that were baked alive because of having to get across the border. And all the other people that drown in rivers getting across, and babies that get thrown over, and all of these unbelievably horrible things that would happen to the illegals themselves before they even get here, and then potentially commit crimes while they're here, right? So he's seen some shit, and now we have serious people in charge doing the right thing. And again, I would say to Jake Tapper or any of the crazies at MSNBC 13 or anyone that's covering this, why didn't you spend more time covering those stories? Think about that. While now you're taking such a high road, you're so great and doing such a great job as a journalist that now that the illegal is here and already murdered somebody or distributed the fentanyl, now you're going to blur their face out just in case there was a little mistake. Because you're really good at your job and you're a really, really good guy. Here's Stephen Miller, who talks like an adult.
Is it the best use of the administration's resources to be going after moms of young kids, basically?
Do you yourself have an opinion on this subject?
I'm more interested in yours.
Well, what percentage of the, let's just pick an even number of, say, 10 million illegal aliens. Let's say that Biden released, I think it's closer to 20 million. Let's say he released 10 million illegal aliens into the country over the last 4 years. What percentage do you think we should let stay here of those 10 million?
I'm not trying to do a game show.
No, but I'm saying,
I'm just curious if you think that's the best use of your limited dollars.
Is it your view that if a Democrat president releases 10, 15, 20 million illegals into the country, they all then should get to stay forever and for all of life?
Stephen, I don't have a view about what Democratic presidents do. I'm asking what the Republican president you work for and how he wants to use his resources.
So you don't want to answer the question because you know the answer is obvious. Everyone that Biden let in has to go home. Of course. I mean, it's a crazy thing to even ask. You think we should give administrative amnesty to some subset of
I'm asking how you're prioritizing the work that your administration is doing.
ICE is going to continue to focus on raids against high-threat criminal aliens. We're going to use the entire force and power of the federal government to get them all home. Many will choose also to leave voluntarily and take advantage of the CBP Home app. But we are not going to ask taxpayers to subsidize the presence of a single illegal alien in this country.
Once again, it's kind of like Homan, a guy who's qualified and who's seen some stuff and lived through the battles and laying it out clearly. And I love, you guys know I love it. I love when, and Trump is really the master at this, he gets asked a stupid question and then he just asks the question back to the reporter, because that in essence causes the reporter to unmask himself very quickly, because what is the answer? So he's even being, I'd say he's being overly generous there. We don't know exactly how many illegals have come through, right? As I always say on the show, is it 10, is it 12, is it 15? But he's saying, okay, it's probably somewhere between 10 and 20 in the 4 years of Biden. That doesn't include, we thought we had about 12 million in the country before that. So there could be upwards of 30 million illegals in the country. We're a country of about, I think, 350 million people. That's like 8% of the population. Like, how does that work out in the long term? Probably not great, even if a huge percentage of those people are very lovely people who just want to be here for the right reasons and everything else. If only 10% of those people, let's say there's about 30 million people and 10% of them are just not the greatest, right? They're a little shady. You got 3 million shady people. And then you could 10% that are kind of really shitty. And we can keep doing those numbers and you still end up with an awful lot of bad people. So the point is, pick your number, whatever your number is. He's right, Stephen Miller. Okay, so fine. It's 10 million. How many should stay? How many dollars should be allocated to that? I also love the fact that the media always cares about dollars and money and rule of law and due process when our side is doing the right thing. When they're printing money, they don't care about money. When they're letting illegals in, they don't care about law and order or anything else. So this is just, I'm telling you guys, focus on the wins here and let your friends know when you have friends, and we all do, they're being mean and I wanted that scary looking fentanyl dealer to stay in my community, and she seemed like a nice, I didn't know what she, and you say, well, okay, how many of these people want? How many dollars do you give? Do you volunteer? Do you let them stay in your house like the Wisconsin judge? I'll give the Wisconsin judge credit. Like, she's for illegal immigration, and then she also let one of them stay at her house or something. Like, you got to give credit where credit's due. It's like Rosie getting the hell out of the country. I'll give you credit. Whether you're an idiot or not, separate issue. Let's talk about 1775 coffee, and then we will have more on the stuff that we're talking about right now. Guys, have you ever had a cup of coffee that makes you feel younger? 1775's Rejuvenate Coffee is a bold, dark roast infused with the same compound shown in studies to reverse biological age by up to 8 years. It energizes your cells, sharpens your mind, and supports long-term strength. No pills, no green sludge, just real results. And the best part, when you buy from 1775 Coffee, you're supporting free speech, freedom of choice, and the creators and values that you believe in. Go to 1775coffee.com, grab the anti-aging longevity roast, and use code Rubin for 15% off. Feel sharper, stronger, and younger today. All right, so let's continue the program we're doing right now. Karoline Leavitt, who we showed a moment ago, again, she is just doing a bang-up job. I talk about this all-star group of people that Trump has around him, whether it's Hegseth or whether it's Rubio or Bobby or Tulsi or whatever, or Karoline, but it's just like, these are all Homan, competent people who are not only doing their job, but can explain why they're doing what they're doing. And remember, just don't forget, because we forget that we live in a time of endless scrolling. We forget things very quickly. This is the woman who has the same job that not only did Jen Psaki, there's a name I haven't said in a while, have for the first 2 years of the Biden administration, but then they gave to that ridiculous Muppet, Corinne Jean-Pierre. And the only reason they gave it to her was because she was a black lesbo. That's it. That was the only reason. And that's what they kept saying. She's the first ever black lesbian to be press secretary. Very exciting. She never knew what she was doing. She always had to circle back. She would have to look it for more information. She was constantly befuddled, but she's a black lesbian. It's very exciting. Now let's contrast hiring someone just because of their skin color and what genitals they like to put their mouth on versus someone who is hired for the right reasons.
As you look around that room and you think about the country and you think about the truth, who do you feel comes closest to finding the closest approximation of the truth?
Well, it depends on the day, and it depends on the issue, and it depends on the story, right? And, there are reporters who get it right sometimes. There's reporters who get it wrong sometimes, and we have to call them out. Fake news is not just wrong information in a story, but it's also acting in bad faith as a reporter and not giving who you're writing about and your sources ample time to respond. There's nothing worse than when I see a reporter in my inbox 20 minutes before a deadline with an entire story written and panned out. That's acting in bad faith. They actually don't care what we have to say. They don't care about the facts in our point of view. They're just emailing us to check the box to say they reached out for comment. So that's fake news, not just, inaccuracies in their reporting.
Yeah, so there's many types of fake news, right? The obvious type of fake news is when they make up a story, or when the headline doesn't match what's in the story, or when you look in the story and it's all anonymously sourced, or those obvious things. The other type of fake news that I wrote about in Don't Burn This Book is when it's the news that they don't tell you about, right? They will ignore a problem forever. And that's a type of fake news because they have the apparatus to cover something and they don't. So there's a fakery, there's shenanigans going on there. But the thing that she was talking about specifically, I cannot tell you how many times that has literally happened to me when either Washington Post or one of these places, New York Times, is doing a hit piece on me or someone I know, and they send me a whole list of questions, and I get it at about 11:30 a.m., and they usually send it actually when they know I'm live on air, and they say, if by 12 noon we're running our story, let us know. And the reason they do that is so, as she pointed out, they can just say at the end, we reached out to Karoline Leavitt, we reached out to Dave Rubin, we reached out to whoever, no comment. So they're basically Hollywood writers. They pick a fictitious story that they write that fits all of their narratives, but then because they need the patina of impartiality, we'll send them an email and say, if you don't get back to me in 15 minutes, then we're gonna go ahead and write the story. Now, I want to jump back to podcaster Michelle Obama. We've been showing a little bit from her podcast, which is, again, not doing particularly well, but I do think there is something funny about this woman who has been basically handed everything, who is Queen of America, loved by the media, and now she desperately wants to be a victim. She's not recognized enough at the airport because people are scrolling their phones too much, and she doesn't get to, what was the thing, her black crying doesn't get to be heard. People don't ask her about her black crying. Oh, by the way, a lot of people, you commented yesterday, I brought in Joseph, who had hurt his, can you just come here around for just a second? Because people don't ask young Chinese Americans about their hands, and he had hurt his finger, and you're saying it's completely fine now.
Yeah.
After you got some sympathy online, it's fine?
Yep, completely healed.
Completely healed. So you see that if you ask someone who's a different skin color or race than you about their feelings, you can literally, he had mashed his finger in a door, suddenly it's completely fine. Anything's possible. Here's Michelle Obama. She's very upset about these deportations, not upset about the fentanyl, not upset about the murders or the rapes, also not upset that her husband deported 3 million illegals, but when Trump's doing it, it's a very, very scary thing.
We couldn't walk around saying valedictorian, straight A student, speaks excellent, has excellent diction if you give them a chance. Mm-hmm. We knew very early on that no one was going to see beyond the color of our skin at an early age. And that could get you in trouble. Well, in this current climate for me, it's, what's happening to immigrants, so it's not the fear for myself anymore. I drive around in a 4-car motorcade with a police escort. I'm Michelle Obama. I do still worry about my daughters in the world, even though they are somewhat recognizable. So my fears are for what I know is happening out there in streets all over the city. And now that we have leadership that is sort of indiscriminately determining who belongs and who doesn't, and knowing that there's so much bias and so much racism and so much ignorance that fuels those kind of choices, I worry for people of color all over this country.
Keep going, lady. Keep going, because you are the reason the Democrat Party is in utter meltdown. It's not indiscriminate. They're arresting people who are here illegally. Also, it is very nice that you have a motorcade and you have security with you all the time, because one thing that could happen is you could be you could be literally anybody walking down the street, and a crazy person on fentanyl might stab you in the neck. Now, you're not very threatened by that. Oddly, though, you kind of point out that your daughters might be. I'm guessing they have some level of secret service too, and security, et cetera, et cetera. But, the average person is not that thrilled with that. The average person's not that thrilled that an executive from a healthcare company got executed in the middle of Times Square. The average person not into it. I should point out, someone in the comment section just mentioned that good Joseph here apparently just showed me his other finger, which is starting to make me wonder if you had injured your finger at all, or you just wanted that Chinese American sympathy that you're always asking for. It's really,
I just want to articulate my pain.
He just wanted to articulate his pain. Maybe it was a psychological pain going through the pinkies. Who the hell knows? There's a large man named J.B. Pritzker who's running Illinois, Chicago. Get me the numbers on the murders of Chicago this past weekend. Chicago, obviously, which has some of the strictest gun laws in the country. A lot of people get shot there every weekend. We don't talk about that on CNN, do we? But if we were to arrest an illegal in Chicago, then you'd have a real problem. But J.B. Pritzker now is basically calling for violence. He wants mass protests in the street, and listen to some of the language here, because Trump is...
Never before in my life have I called for mass protests, for mobilization, for disruption, but I am now. These Republicans cannot know a moment of peace. They have to understand that we will fight their cruelty with every megaphone and microphone that we have.
The dangers that my family experienced in Ukraine, the dangers that we saw in Nazi Germany, especially in the earliest days of Nazi Germany, are the dangers that we need to react to now. If we don't, things will get much, much worse. And so we've got to raise alarm bells to everybody. It's a 5-alarm fire, everyone. It's time to step out of your comfort zone and step out into the streets and speak up and make your voices.
All right, I'll do the funny version in a sec. But first, let me just say this about this fat fuck retard motherfucker. I grew up around Holocaust survivors on both sides of my family. Let me tell you a quick story about my, I called him my uncle. He was kind of my great uncle Joe, but my uncle Jerry's father, whose family was all basically slaughtered in the Holocaust and lost one of his children, lost his first wife. I knew him and his later wife, who was also a survivor. He had the numbers tattooed on his arm and would tell us all the stories. He actually had to, he was in Germany when the war was breaking out, and he had his first daughter, and he had to take her to a Christian seminary when she was about 4 years old and drop her off there and tell her that her name was Mary. I'm blanking on what her original name was, but tell her that her name was Mary, so that at the convent they would take her in as a Christian child, not as a Jew, and that then she would be saved. After he survived the war, got out of the concentration camp, and then about 10 years later had to try to kidnap his own daughter from the from the convent, because he had no proof that it was her daughter. She didn't really remember him or anything. And he got shot while doing that, and actually then had a bullet in his body for the rest of his life because they couldn't remove it. It was too close to his heart or something. I think I'm getting this basically right. I knew Holocaust survivors on both sides of my family that went through unimaginable things. So when you sit there pretending that what Donald Trump is doing right now by removing fentanyl dealers and murderers and gang members and all of these things, that this has anything to do with the Holocaust, it's just disgusting. And I know you people have blown apart standards to the point that nothing means anything anymore. But what does he want? Republicans, what was the line? Republicans should not have a moment of peace. Okay, so what do you mean? What do you mean? Every time a Republican goes to a restaurant, should we ransack the restaurant? Should we just have protesters outside of Republicans' houses all the time? Should we blow up their cars, trans-suicide bombers blowing up Republicans? What is it that you people want? I think it's fairly obvious that what you want, but you might be careful with what you ask for. Anyway, it continues over at wait, what was the funny part I was going to do? I don't even remember what the funny part I was going to do. That guy's just pathetic. Over on MSNBC, they brought on Maddow not to anchor, but to be a guest on a program. And watch this, the interviewer, her name is Fang. Here she is. And it's just that the Democrats didn't realize how terrible. The reason everything's so bad right now is the Democrats didn't spend enough time thinking and imagining about how horrible Trump could be.
Was there some profound failure of imagination on our part that we did not reasonably anticipate how effective Trump and his cabal of doers would be? And the reason why I say that is they destroy, they wreak havoc, and they cause so much damage. And then they're told that's illegal. They're told you can't do that. They're told that that is wrong. And we see that, right? But the damage has been done. And then you have people like U.S. citizens that are now being held in prisons. I mean, it's these types of things that really make me wonder, did we, again, have a failure of imagination?
You said, I actually look at it, I think, the other way around. I think that he is definitely more ambitious in terms of the kind of radical change he wants for the country. I do think we're in the middle of an attempted authoritarian overthrow of American democracy. I mean, I think everybody who predicted that was right, but I don't think he's any better at it.
You people are just terrible. Yes, lady, it was a failure of imagination. You guys have imagined Trump to be every horrible thing in the history of your world. You compare him to Genghis Khan and Hitler and everybody else and Pol Pot and all the Skeletor and Megatron and Sauron and Darth Vader. Give me one more from a video game. Darth Maul. That's not a video. Well, I guess there is a video game with Darth Maul. Give me one other iconic bad guy from something. Saruman. Isn't that Sauron? Where they work together. They were kind of in cahoots with each other. But you people have compared him with who's the guy with the snake head from Harry Potter? Who's the bad guy in Harry Potter? Voldemort. You got it. Just think of your own bad guy, And you guys have done that. You just didn't have enough imagination to realize how bad he was. And yes, Rachel, I will give you credit. He does want to radically change the country. Because you people wrecked everything. You said that this great country, the greatest experiment in the history of the world for almost 250 years, you guys said it's not worth that much. You guys said it shouldn't have a border. You guys said it shouldn't have law and order. You said everyone can be here. You said chop off kids' genitals. You said you said the founding of this thing was bad. You said all of this stuff, and we've had enough. So we want to radically change it from you. You had decades to run through the institutions. You had decades to break the brains of young people. You have had all of that. And Sorry, you can't have it anymore. A guy who can't have a show anymore is Chuck Todd. He was the anchor of Meet the Press over on NBC for the last couple of years, did a pretty terrible job, ran the show into the ground, and now you just got a computer and a screen and he talks for a living, and that's just fine. But he's very upset right now because people are saying that it's the media's fault around Biden's cognitive decline, that that it was the media that covered it up, not just the Democrats. And he's really going out of his way to still carry water for the media, which he's no longer part of. Watch.
This is not a media failure. This is a failure of the Democratic Party. And I just sort of the virtue signaling that some people have done to try to say that the media missed this story. They didn't miss this story. No. David Ignatius wrote, I just refuse to accept this stupid premise because it's a right-wing, manufactured right-wing premise in order to stain the media. This is an attempt by some to virtue signal, and it's this horrible sort of pitting different news organizations against each other, when ultimately the people at fault are Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Jill Biden, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, every elected member of Congress.
Chuck, I like that you really emoted there. That was very impressive. But you had a show, and you had Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and all of these people on the show. Did you think about asking them the question about Joe Biden? Did you ever do that? I had young Chinese American Joseph over here check. That's how I'm referring to you from now on. I had him check. Did Chuck Scarborough, that's the NBC news anchor from New York, if you remember him, did Chuck Todd, I combined Joe Scarborough and Chuck Todd into Chuck Scarborough. Did Chuck Todd ever cover Biden's decline before the debate? And as far as we can tell, he did not. So what do you mean? If let's say it was Chuck and Nancy and Joe and Jill and these other people that were covering it up. Again, why is it that we all saw it? Why is it that we were always playing the clips? They may have been covering something up, but that doesn't stop us from seeing it, right? Like, why? So you did cover it up. You did. So I enjoy your fake emotion. I enjoy your lack of career. But again, dude, just get a mirror. Connor, do we have one of those old school clips where we show someone doing the exact opposite of what the guy just said? So what Chuck just said was that the media didn't cover anything up. It wasn't the media's fault. It was Chuck, and it was we got one. I think we got one.
And we have some cheap fakes that the RNC once again spreading vicious lies about Joe Biden, but that's who they are.
We should point those out.
That's who they've become. We will point that in a second. But Jonathan Lemire, I was struck by the strong message as well that Joe Biden delivered yesterday.
Oh, yeah. The strong message and the wandering off. And we played you the clip yesterday. Like, there's so much of this. I don't think I have to bludgeon you over the head with it. But no, it wasn't the media. Chuck right there. Chuck is the same guy. What was it that he said? He said that Joe was probably mentally more acute than him at one point. Like, these people, they deserve none of your respect. They deserve none of your attention or anything else. And yes, we just have to keep sort of pushing them aside as we pave the way for the new world. And the new world's a-coming, even through the stock market. It's bouncing back, baby. We'll talk about that in just a second, but first, Prolon Life. Busy weeks can leave you feeling drained. That's why I turned to Prolon's 5-day fasting diet, which is a doctor-developed program that resets your body at the cellular level for real lasting results. Now, with the new next-gen 5-day program, Prolon is even better, with 100% organic soups and teas, richer flavors, and ready-to-eat meals. Prolon helps you stay on track with your health goals by nourishing your body while keeping it in a fasting state, supporting fat loss, energy, skin health, and even biological age reduction. For a limited time, the Rubin Report listeners get 15% off site-wide plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe to their 5-day program. Visit prolonlife.com/Dave. That's PROLONLIFE.com/Dave to claim your 15% discount and your bonus gift. Okay, so we all remember a couple weeks ago, Trump announces that we're laying tariffs on these 70 some odd countries and we want to get better deals. And what happened? welcome you to go back to all of our Rubin reports. I said it was just a negotiating tactic and it was going to be temporary to get people to the table. Of course, that's exactly what happened. But as Trump and Elon promised, there was going to be some pain points along the way. So what happened the very next day? The stock market did crash. Absolutely. It was down about 6%. It was a massive loss for everybody. I'm sure many of you watching this, myself included. And subsequently, then a whole bunch of countries came back in a day or two later and they were like, you know, we do like selling things to America. We make a whole bunch of shitty stuff, and these ding-dong Americans keep buying our crap, and we do like that. So we're going to start negotiating. And then once that happened, the stock market started coming up, 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 up. And check this out from Investopedia. Market news, April 28th, 2025, S&P 500 Dow extended winning streaks to 5 days as stocks rally in late trading. So we've basically made up all of the losses. And there are certain sectors that even are doing better. And now watch Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. I don't often mention it with him, but a man who happens to be gay, and I'm only mentioning that because they love that shit, but actually he was hired not because of that. He was hired because he's competent. And here he is pointing out how when things go bad, if it's a Republican president, Trump's destroying the economy. But when things start turning around, just as, again, wizard Dave Rubin predicted, well, they don't give you the credit on that one.
For the very first time, the president's polling numbers on the economy are underwater, with 53% saying it has gotten worse under President Trump, with 72% of those in our poll saying it is very or somewhat likely that his economic policies will cause a recession. Your reaction?
Oh, well, Martha, I haven't seen the polls, and for the past 35 years, my business was analyzing data, so I think we probably got to dig down in those. But what I do know is that Americans are behaving very different than what the surveys say. So the surveys may say that, but consumers are still spending. So I prefer to look at what Americans are doing rather than how they're answering pollsters.
And it doesn't worry you, the poll numbers that you have seen?
When I start seeing data to the contrary, then we can look at that. But again, these poll numbers, and also when I look at some of the things that are being published, there was a story 10 days ago that said this is the worst April for the stock market since the Great Depression. 10 days later, the NASDAQ is now up on the month of April. And I haven't seen a story that says, "Oh, stock market has biggest bounce back ever." So
it certainly has gone back and forth.
I think a lot of this is media driven.
Yes, of course it's media driven, and you can see Martha is just so desperately carrying water for the Democrats. That's what they do. But he's making a good point. If you are going to say when the stock market dips the 6% because of Trump applying these tariffs, if you're going to say it's the biggest stock market collapse since the Great Depression, blah, blah, well then over the last 5 days, as now we've basically recouped all of those losses and gotten further gains, 5 straight days, I just read it to you, then you would think that the same people would be writing, if they were journalists, not activists, you would write about why it cratered, and then 2 weeks later, as it came back, you would write about why it's coming back. But that's not how they do it. David Sachs, who is the czar of crypto and AI from the All In podcast, here he is illustrating that point a little bit further.
There was a tweet 2 weeks ago when all this started by Nick Carter that I retweeted because I thought it was really interesting, which was, if you think a market sell-off delegitimizes Trump's presidency, you're going to give him unconditional credit when it rallies, right? Because those are the rules now. And that's exactly what's happened, is that the market has rallied. Like you said, it's up 7% this week, but the media doesn't want to give Trump any credit for it. So it's kind of created this narrative of a Bessent put. In other words, Bessent is entirely responsible for it. I think if the media is going to tear Trump down every time the market goes down, you have to give him credit when the market goes back up. And I think there's just a general reluctance to do that.
Right. Now, look, the media doesn't have to do anything, right? They can, that would be, I'm just like whittling a slight difference there. They don't have to do anything. We would like a media that was honest and that, again, would just report on it. Trump decided to do tariffs. The market tanked. True. 2 weeks later, countries coming back to negotiate because of said tariffs, market recouped. That would be an honest way of reporting what has happened here. They can do it however they want. And the more they do it the way that David is pointing out there, the more they do it where we only credit Trump for the bad things, never for the good things, well, the more they bury themselves in essence. That is how it has been. And I just don't think they're going to turn around. I'm showing you that so you have a little ammo when you go to conversations with your friends. And, well, Trump crushed the economy. It's like, well, actually, it's in better shape than it was before. And these countries are coming back and there's evidence of that. And maybe you're just paying attention to too much mainstream media. They continued on the All In podcast. What's his name? Andrew Ross Sorkin was one of the guest hosts, and he was asking Sachs and Polypatia about the tariff situation. And again, did this create leverage? Is it a problem, et cetera, et cetera?
Is there a way to do this with a velvet glove, if you will? And maybe there's no way to do it in a better
But what is to
way.
say? No, but what is to say this isn't the velvet glove? This could be. It's that the stock market is down 6%. Like, it's not down 60%.
But this is what I think is so interesting, Andrew, is the way that Trump has already shifted the conversation. Because the truth of the matter is that before Liberation Day on April 2nd, just 3 weeks ago, no one was talking about the unfair trade practices. No one was talking about the dependencies on rare earths. No one was talking about the race to the bottom. And Trump has shifted the conversation.
100%.
When Jared Kushner was on the show, he talked about how the Trumpian approach is controversy elevates message. And we said at the beginning that by having this Liberation Day, by planting this flag in the ground, Trump was creating leverage to then have these negotiations, and he completely shifted the conversation. Now, where I will agree with you is that the administration has to stick the landing here, right? Besson, and it's not just Besson, also Lutnick, these are all smart, talented people. They do have to then negotiate these deals, and we have to basically stick the landing. But I think the fact that you're saying that you don't disagree with where Trump is trying to get to, but it's mostly just tactical, is a huge shift in the conversation.
Yeah, you know what? I'm making an adjustment. I keep telling you, I always name all these names of how great people are. I'm moving Sachs up. Maybe we'll come up with a list of like who's the best on just in the Trump administration right now, like who's just getting win after win after win. And Sachs actually has become probably the best explainer. Marco is doing a great job on the foreign policy stuff. But when it comes to what's going on with the economy, I think Sachs gets it more than anybody else. He's completely right. So he's taken Sorkin, who's, kind of a left-wing, definitely Democrat, CNBC type. And his question was an interesting one because it's like, could you do it with what did he say, a velvet glove, a little bit softer, right? Trump is a bull in a china shop. Years ago, I used to talk about how the people that had an aversion to Trump, they don't want a bull in a china shop. They want a panther in a china shop, right? They want a panther to slyly walk in and with its tail knock one little vase off a thing and then close the door on the way out. But you don't get that. That's why the metaphor is not, the analogy is not a panther in a china shop. It's a bull in a china shop, right? But Sachs lays it out beautifully that Trump did exactly what he said he was going to do. It brought everybody over, but then Sachs does put a pin where he says, but the key thing will be the landing, meaning right now they're having all of the meetings. We know that they're having the meetings, and we know that some countries immediately removed tariffs. I think it was Mexico, Israel, Argentina. There were a couple others that immediately did it. But now there's going to be all of these other countries that will come in, but it's got to work out. So right now, to me, this is all wins. But at the end, if this is, we get to the end of the 90 days, and there's 40 countries that are like, screw you, America, then we'll have to reevaluate and see where we're at. But the point is, as Sachs pointed out, Sorkin, you're getting what you wanted. You do realize, even though the left never wants to do anything about it, you do realize that these trade deals were never good. And congratulations, you're getting somewhere. Okay, we will finally get to what's going on in Canada. I know our numbers, the live view numbers are really good right now, and I'm sure a lot of you are Canadian going, where is the Canada story? I'll see if I can work in a Justin Trudeau accent and everything, but first, Rumble Premium. Free speech is under attack, but Rumble refuses to back down. We've always believed in empowering voices no matter how unpopular, and now we're taking that fight to the next level. When major advertisers conspired to pull their dollars, even brands like Dunkin' Donuts turned their backs. But we're not here to fit a mold, we're here to defend free expression. To strengthen this mission, we're excited to offer Rumble Premium, a completely ad-free experience with exclusive benefits for viewers and creators. You'll find exclusive content from creators like Russell Brand, Dr. Disrespect, Timcast and the Mug Club with Crowder. It's more than a subscription. It's a stand for free speech. Your voice matters. Join Rumble Premium. For a limited time, you can get $10 off the annual plan using promo code Rubin. Visit rumble.com/premium/Rubin and claim your discount today. Whether you join Rumble Premium or simply keep watching, your support helps keep free speech alive. All right, so let's get to our neighbor from the north, Canada. Now, Canada, of course, is known for several things. I think we put together a little image there. You've got a hockey puck. You've got the Toronto, is that the Blue Jays, of course? You've got poutine on their fries. People don't know that. They don't put ketchup on their fries. They put poutine. You've got Canadian maple syrup, which is doubly good when it's in a jar that looks like a leaf from a maple tree. Of course, you have wonderful comic actor who left us too early, John Candy, and you have lots of jihadists. That's Canada kind of in a nutshell. Now, Canada had an election yesterday, and the election did not go well from where I'm sitting down here. Mark Carney, the man who replaced there he is, the man who replaced Justin Trudeau as the head of the Liberal Party, who basically has all of the same policies as Justin Trudeau, but he just looks like a middle-aged man in a fitting suit. He is now Canada's prime minister. He definitely comes from he is cut from the same cloth as Justin Trudeau. As far as I know, he has no major policy disagreements with Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau started just get too much stank attached to him. People started seeing through the bullshit, right? His fake affect and I'm for the LGBT2 spirit, blah, 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 and the things he did with the truckers. There was just too much stank attached to the guy. He stank. And so they brought in a guy who had a little less stank. That's what they got now. Joe Biden, who obviously does not have a phone or is not allowed on Twitter, they put out a tweet in his name. Who knows if he was even awake for this. I congratulate Prime Minister Mark Carney and the Liberal Party on their success in Canada's election. I'm confident Mark will be a strong leader for the fundamental values and interests Canadians and Americans share. Now, before I get into Carney for a second, I do want to address the Trump point because I put out a tweet this morning about Canada, basically saying I'm very sorry for Canada. It's very sad what's happened here. I don't see a way to spin that. As it relates to Trump, I saw a lot of people saying, if Trump would have stayed out of it, if Trump didn't push so hard on the 51st state thing and some of the trade stuff and tariff stuff, that it's possible that the conservatives and Poly would have won here. But basically, by Trump going so hard, it galvanized support on the left. Now, look, that might be true. There might be some truth to that, right? Like you're an average Canadian. Let's say it doesn't even matter. Do you lean a little right or left or whatever, but you're just an average Canadian and there's someone from another country that's kind of going at you guys. Does that sort of line you up with the opposition? And in this case, the opposition would be the left. Maybe it is. So maybe there's some blame here for the way Trump did this. Maybe. And by the way, you could also credit Trump in some sense because Trump's argument was basically I kind of want a lefty government up in Canada because I know I can smack them around. So we'll see what happens with all of that. But if you want to get a sense of who Carney really is this a guy who's going to bring law and order back to Canada? Is this a guy who's going to kick the jihadists off the streets of Toronto and Montreal? Is this a guy who's going to do good energy deals specifically for Western Canada before they secede, which I think there's probably going to be an even bigger movement for Calgary to get the hell out? No, he's not that. He's someone who wants to bring net zero and climate change into every single conversation.
You demanded action, and now it's time for the financial sector to deliver. To reach net zero, every country, every company, every bank, every investor, every pension fund around the world will need to make some big changes. In the run-up to COP26 in Glasgow, we have an enormous opportunity to bring climate change into the heart of every financial decision. And our plan will manage the risks from climate change while helping to seize the opportunities from a newer, greener economy. The UK has been at the forefront of innovation for centuries, brimming with ingenuity and a can-do spirit. It also houses the world's largest financial system. And by bringing them together, we can deliver the net zero world that you've demanded and that our future generations deserve.
Man, I'm not even going to repeat what I just said because I've dropped a couple F-bombs already on this show, but Canada is so screwed because what's so obvious to me is that guy is Trudeau, except he's in a different skin. All of the horrible policies. Imagine with everything going on in Canada right now, that really the number one thing is that we should rejigger the entire economy, a country that is so rich with natural resources. we should rejigger the entire economy so we're more like the UK, so we can get to net zero, so we can stop climate change, regardless of anyone's feelings about climate change or if it's man-made or if it's going up or down or anything else. Like, that's what he's focused on. And that is going to come to the detriment of an awful lot of Canadians. Now, I do think you can also put some blame on the Conservatives in Canada here. Pierre Poilievre, who was the leader of the Canadian Party, I've played a couple videos of him. I thought his messaging was pretty good. A lot of people were critical of him, that he wasn't out there doing the Trump thing. He wasn't out there getting on podcasts, showing a different side of himself. He was a little bit too stiff. He didn't align himself with Trump enough, because that might have kind of defrayed a little bit of the average person that then got pushed towards Carney because they felt Canada was under attack. Here he is congratulating Carney.
So I would like to congratulate Prime Minister Carney on leading this minority government. We'll have plenty of opportunity to debate and disagree, but tonight we come together as Canadians. We will do our job. Yes, we will do our job to hold the government to account. But first, we congratulate people from all political backgrounds on participating in the democratic process. And as I said, while we will do our constitutional duty of holding government to account and proposing better alternatives, we will always put Canada first as we stare down tariffs and other irresponsible threats from President Trump. Conservatives will work with the Prime Minister and all parties with the common goal of defending Canada's interests.
Okay, so you see what he did there at the end. Then he kind of goes after Trump. Now, should he have aligned himself more with Trump, and that would have helped him a little bit more? He sees the tea leaves changing, so he's basically like, we lost and we're going to defend ourselves from Trump now. Who knows what his future is? He also lost his own seat. He didn't just lose the race for prime ministership, right, to be the leader of the head party of the government. He also lost his own seat in Carleton. So this is an absolute disaster for the Conservatives. And the Conservatives, as Jordan Peterson often talks about, and as Gad Saad, many of my Canadian friends talk about, the Conservative Party in Canada is not really conservative. They're just like a little less wackadoodle lefty, basically. But they had an opportunity because things have been so bad under Trudeau, and that chance is now gone, and that is a huge, huge problem. Now, interestingly, Jordan Peterson, we showed you some other clips of this a week or so ago. He was on Rogan last week, so this is before the election. And listen to this, because Poilievre had a huge lead for a while. Everyone, all of the poly markets, all the betting markets really thought the Conservatives were going to win. And that started changing over the last couple days. Here's Peterson talking about how Trump maybe did not understand by going at Canada that it was going to galvanize the left in their country.
They could be the 51st state.
Yeah, that's what happened. So two things.
Yes,
back to that.
That was the big one.
Carney showed up just in the nick of time to save the burning damsel from the train tracks, or whatever the hell it is. And
the rhetoric.
And then Trump, he just timed it so badly. And he didn't know. He didn't know what it would do. He didn't know. But that's also...
How do you not know that people have national pride?
Yeah, he knew that, but he didn't know what the electoral consequences would be. He didn't know that would shift them to the Liberals so radically. And he's going to pay for that, because once Carney is elected, if that happens, Trump will not have a more seasoned enemy in the West.
Boy.
Right? Carney's very well connected. Very. Especially in Europe and the UK. Very well.
Right. Okay. So it's a little hard to do a total autopsy on this thing at the moment. But I think Jordan, again, that's a week ago, and he basically predicted it right. Like, if Carney is going to win, which is ultimately what happened, well, now the left is going to be so look, wow, see, we beat Trump. We beat evil America. We're not going to be the 51st state, blah, blah, blah. And now we're going to be in a fight. It seems fairly obvious we will now be in a big fight with Canada. Now, again, maybe this is Trump's, 4D chess. He wanted the Liberal in because it's easier to smack around the Liberal at the end of the day. But we basically got a globalist puppet in charge of Canada. And again, putting aside the politics for a second, I just want to say to anyone that is in Canada right now, and you're really depressed, I get it. When I was in California the day after that recall failed, and I thought, I live in a place that is completely incongruent with my beliefs. I live in a place where crime is allowed to happen. I live in a place where illegals are allowed to take over. I live in a place where they can just have mobs, burn down stores for BLM, or they were forcing people to wear masks, or all those things. I know what that hopeless feeling is like. Now, I live in America, where literally the next day, I mean, I kid you not, the next day I decided to move to Florida. And 3 months later, I moved 2 companies and a bunch of employees, everyone in this room, and we moved here to the free state of Florida. Now, you guys don't have federalism that way. You have different provinces, and yes, it's a little freer in the western side of Canada than it is in the east. And maybe it's a little better in the rural areas than it is in the cities like Toronto and Montreal. But I just want to say, like, I'm unbelievably sympathetic. I know what that feeling is, and you have to think about what you want to do. And again, I always tell you, I meet so many snowbirds down here because this is where all the Canadians come when they want to get out of that tough tundra in the winter, and they come down here, and many, many more of them are staying longer and longer, right? Right now, they would normally be going back, right? Because now you're going to roll into the spring and summer in Canada when it's nice, and a lot of them are staying longer and longer. So I have nothing but sympathy. But if you want to see the direction that Canada likely will continue to go in, check out this from the National Post. Ontario must pay for surgery to give trans resident both penis and vagina. According to an appeal court, the Court of Appeal says OHIP must cover surgery for a resident seeking to have a vagina constructed while leaving a penis intact. Like, could you just pick one? We don't ask for much at this point. You want to chop your genitals off? I don't see why the government has to pay, but you have to have a penis and a vagina, and the government has to pay for it. And guess what? This shit is going to continue there. So really, I do mean it. We'll keep tracking this, and I have a lot of sympathy for you guys right now. And everyone, this is, again, if you're an American and you're watching this, just know this is the strength of our system. This is the strength of our system. When we had a ridiculous puppet in office named Joe Biden, you were able, even though it was hard, you couldn't escape all of the horrible things that the Democrats are doing. They were printing money like crazy. They were letting people in like crazy, all of those things. But you could move to a place that was more in line with your values. And that's why Tennessee is flourishing and Florida is flourishing, et cetera. And several other, Montana's flourishing and Texas and whatever. It's much harder to do that in Canada. So if you're from an American perspective, be very happy that our founders wrote that those old white guys from a long time ago wrote those crazy documents. But now I want to connect this to a little bit back of what is going on in America, because I think Trump has to learn from Canada's migrant policy mistakes. They let all these people in. They've lost, they have massive, massive jihad protests all the time in Canada. See what's going on in Toronto. See what's going on in Montreal. It ain't good. And if you're a Jew living in Canada right now, I can only imagine what you're doing right now, making some calls and trying to see whether you can get into America or into Israel, because it's just, the future does not, I just don't see a positive future there. I just simply do not. So what we have to do in America as it pertains to immigration, even though I've obviously spent a ton of time over the last couple of months talking about how Trump's doing so many great things, is we have to refine that and think about what we're doing. Because here's Trump talking about how if you graduate from a U.S. college, you should automatically get a green card. And I think it's worth thinking, is this a policy that really makes sense? Take a look.
What I want to do and what I will do is, you graduate from a college, I think you should get automatically, as part of your diploma, a green card to be able to stay in this country. And that includes junior colleges too. Anybody graduates from a college, you go in there for 2 years or 4 years. If you graduate or you get a doctorate degree from a college, you should be able to stay in this country.
All right, Donnie, I've been supporting you as much as I can, not with you on that one. I think we have seen enough of people coming into our country on student visas. And just because you get through 4 years of the indoctrination system, that should not give you a green card. That shouldn't give you a pathway to citizenship. First off, we need better vetting of who's getting the student visas in the first place. And then we need better vetting on the other side. But just because you get through 4 years of college doesn't mean you should be a citizen of the United States. So we're going to have to also level up too. I should point out that was back in June. I don't know if Trump's feelings on that have changed in light of what we have seen out of Harvard and Yale and Columbia, of course, and some of these other countries over the last 6-7 months. But now I want to connect this to something else, because they're trying to impeach Trump again. Yes, it's completely ridiculous. But here is a guy. He's a Michigan congressman. I had never heard of this guy until 2 days ago. His name is Shri Thanedar. And Shri Thanedar immigrated to America, as I understand it, legally in 1979 from India, and that's just fine. And here he is talking about announcing the articles of impeachment against Donald Trump. You're going to think that this is a parody. It is not a parody. It is real. Well, life's a parody, so it is what it is.
This is Congressman Shri Thanedar. Donald Trump has already done real damage to our democracy, but defying a unanimous 9-0 Supreme Court ruling, that has to be the final straw. It's time we impeach Donald J. Trump. The court said the wrongfully deported Kilmer Garcia must be allowed to return and receive due process. Trump ignored it. He ignored the Constitution. He ignored the very checks and balances that keep our democracy intact. This isn't an isolated incident. It's part of a dangerous, deliberate pattern. That's why today I introduced a resolution to impeach Donald J. Trump, outlining 7 articles of impeachment.
Before I comment, I know you're all waiting for something. Allow me to read a tweet by fellow American Indian. I hate these stupid phrases. Dinesh D'Souza. His family's from India. Let me just read what he said about this. If this, he's retweeting the video here. If this guy lived in India, he would be a municipal clerk or a waiter. Here he thrives because of diversity. On the left, his broken English and his semi-illiterate socialisms are seen as positive traits. We need fewer people like him in this country. So that's Dinesh's feelings on this. Before I comment on him specifically, I want to tell you about a month ago, I was at an Indian restaurant. And I ordered the vegetable fal tracy, and I ordered the butter chicken and some mimosas. And the waiter came with the bill. And I was about to sign the bill. And I was sitting with my friend, and he said, "Do you know how to tip at an Indian restaurant?" I said, "Well, normally I give about 20%. The waiter was just fine." And he said, "Don't forget to curry the one." Thank you for laughing at that, even though I told it to you right before we started the show. Look, I don't care about this guy or anything else. It's just like this is what the Democrats have. You have 25 hours of bloviating Cory Booker in the Capitol, then sitting for 15 hours on the Capitol steps. You have this ridiculous guy doing impeachment. You have Chuck Schumer. "We're so proud of you, Cory, for doing the thing." You just have a clown car of ridiculous people. And even though I'm not part of that clown car anymore, we have to acknowledge, and this is what I want Trump to acknowledge, why I showed you the thing about student visas and to automatically get citizenship. We have to realize that these people, once they get power, even if it's just limited in the little section that they live in, they do terrible things. This one is out of Hennepin County, Minnesota, where they are literally trying to add race into prosecutions, meaning, yes, if you are white, you will be prosecuted more than, say, a brown person. Take a look.
On Monday, prosecutors in Hennepin County are being asked to enact a very controversial policy. They will be required to consider race when offering plea deals. It's part of a new policy from Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty. Lou Raguse leads off our coverage tonight. Lou?
Julie, this new policy was sent to me by sources within the Hennepin County Attorney's Office concerned that the policy could be unconstitutional if they start taking race-based government actions in their roles as prosecutors. This is a new negotiation policy set to go into effect Monday in Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty's office. In it, Moriarty lays out several considerations, including race, that our prosecutors should take when extending plea deal offers to defendants. The policy says proposed resolutions should consider the person charged as a whole person, including their racial identity and age. While those factors should not be controlling, they should be part of the overall analysis. Prosecutors should be identifying and addressing racial disparities at decision points as appropriate.
Oh, Lord. All right, you guys get why this is so dangerous. Lady Justice, blindfold, she's not supposed to pay attention to any of those things. She's not supposed to care whether you're rich or poor, black or white, gay or straight, blah, 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 have a penis and a vagina, penis or a vagina, vaginaless penis, etc. She's not supposed to care about any of that stuff. But you people, the very same people who for years have been yelling at us that we are a systemically racist country, you are trying to literally put racism into the system. Racism as a notion exists. There are human beings that are racist, but we are not systemically racist. There is no law that is racist. There are institutions like Harvard that act in racist ways, and that even when the Supreme Court says you can't do that, they still try to do it. And now the Trump administration's going after them for it. But it's now the progressives, the tolerant and diverse progressives, who want racial diversity to take a seat at the table when someone's being prosecuted. So that what they are actually asking for is if a black guy and a white guy, they're a duo, bad duo, they're going to rob a bank. They go rob a bank and they do the exact same shit. They plan it together. They put on their masks together. They get their guns together and they rob the bank together. That when it comes to prosecuting those guys, we should look at their lives and we want, what did they say? Safe, equitable outcomes. And well, that black guy may have had it a little bit tougher than that white guy, because there's no poor white people, right? No, every white person is just like, you get the silver spoon, they hand you cash, you get going. But that black guy might have had a little bit worse, so we're gonna he'll get 2 years in prison, and white guy, you get 4 years in prison. Do you think this works? Do you think this stops racism? This actually creates racism. And to counter that, what we need in America is to treat everyone equally. Now, of course, we have individual rights, we have equal protection under the law, et cetera, et cetera. So we have some constitutional barriers against this thing, and it strikes me if they do this, this could get all the way up to the Supreme Court. But what Donald Trump also is doing, and I agree with this too, and it was very controversial, he signed an executive order a couple of weeks ago saying that English would be the national language of America. You need that. You need it. It is the only, if you cannot communicate with your neighbor, I'm not demanding that everyone speak English, right? But if you don't say, we have a nation that we speak a common language, then ultimately what do you have over time, right? You'll just have little bastions of places where everyone will just be wildly different and have nothing in common. And that's just not good. Actually, just ask the Europeans how that worked out, because they do have that. Now he's also signing an executive order that will require truckers to speak English.
And then the third executive order, which actually speaks to the heart of your question earlier about the Uber drivers, will be a order directing the Department of Transportation to include English literacy tests for our truckers. This is a big problem in the trucking community that, unless you're in that community, you might not know. But there's a lot of communication problems between truckers on the road, with federal officials and local officials as well, which obviously is a public safety risk. So we're going to ensure that our truckers, who are the backbone of our economy, are all able to speak English. That's a very common sense policy in the United States of America. So the president will be signing that later this afternoon.
Right. It's not something that comes up for all of us all the time, but truckers do communicate. It's Ted, over. I'm on the road. There's a dead raccoon. Watch out. Frank, and another thing over there. Watch out. There's a crack in it. And they should be able to communicate. Otherwise, it could be a problem. So again, we're just trying to do basic things that are okay. So what do we have to do here? Good policies, sane people, and then just kind of coalesce it. Just coalesce it. Here, again, we are going to in this case, I'm going to call it the televised mental institution known as MSNBC, where they've been reduced, right? This is MSNBC, isn't it? Yeah, I think it is, yeah. Where they've been reduced to quoting legendary thinker Biggie Smalls to explain Donald Trump.
And so what do you see in a crash in the markets, in the polling, and in Musk leaving?
Oh, Musk. Let me start. There's that old saying, I think it started with Mark Shields. Let me apply it to Mark. So Elon Musk and Donald Trump go into a car wash with the top down. Trump stays dry. Only Elon Musk gets wet. And there's always somebody to get wet for Trump, and he doesn't.
If you remember the great philosopher Biggie Smalls, who said, I went from ashy to classy, I went from negative to positive, and it's still all good.
The worst problems you have are the ones you bring on yourself. And then you are recriminations at yourself. And it slows you down, and you think, and you do something differently. Trump doesn't have that. He's got some demonic thing inside of him that can just keep pushing him and pushing him. Then he'll say something out of the blue that erases everything, but it doesn't work anymore, because you can only do that. You can only say white is black, black is white, white is black so many times before it doesn't work.
I'm bringing back mental institution. I had kind of dropped it because of the MSNBC 13, but I don't know what the high hell they're talking about. Trump has demons in him, as white as black, black as white, big as small as whatever. Look, I would just say this. Instead of hip hop, the hippie to the hippie, the hip hop, and you don't stop rocking to the bang bang the boogie, say up jump the boogie to the rhythm of the boogie the beat. You see my point? You see my point? That was Rapper's Delight. I'm not a big rap guy, but that one always got me right. You know, remember in, what was it? What was it, Billy Madison? No. What Adam Sandler movie was it with the old lady singing that? That was the golf one? Or was it Mr. Deeds? Adam Sandler movie, Rapper's Delight. The old lady. And she said, the hip hop, the hippity hop. Yeah, who was that lady? What movie was that? The Wedding Singer. It was The Wedding Singer. Thank you. Then a hip hop, the hippie to the hippie, the hip hop, and you don't stop rocking to the bang bang boogie. Stay up jump the boogie to the rhythm of the boogie the beat. Here's Elon Musk, a man who apparently gets wet when he's in a convertible with Donald Trump back in 2012 talking to Jon Stewart. And Jon Stewart, big lefty, but he loved him back then.
First of all, I'm just glad that you are not a hologram, because you have invented a rocket.
Yeah.
And a spaceship on the rocket, and you have launched this into orbit already.
Yes.
And brought it back.
Yes. Yes.
I'm going to just give you a list. This is what I know about science. The 4 entities that have done that are the United States,
right,
China, the Soviet Union, and Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. When I was in college, there were 3 areas that I thought would most affect the future of humanity. And those were the internet, sustainable energy, and space exploration, particularly making life multiplanetary.
Elon, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to tell you something right now. We all thought that. But none of us could do anything about it. We just got high and played Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, I did that too.
All right. Well, John, that is what you did. And Elon was able to get high and play Dungeons and Dragons. Not my thing, at least the Dungeons and Dragons part. But he was able to work on the internet. Bought Twitter, renamed it X. Free speech online. We are the media. Sustainable energy, doing some stuff with electric cars. That's pretty good. The grid. I just drove all the way across Florida over the weekend. We took the kids to the other coast of Florida, and you stop once. You don't even have to stop on the way. We can make it all the way across Alligator Alley on one charge. We charged there and came back. It's a beautiful piece of machinery, the Tesla. And then, of course, Life Interplanetary. Yeah, it's going to happen in our lifetime. Like, how freaking cool is that? I show you that clip to the backdrop of that's the enemy now. So the very same people, Jon Stewart, who's fawning all over him, and the very same people who in the audience there were probably in their 20s, and now they're, 35, 40. Those are the people that are etching swastikas into Teslas right now because the machine has told them that he is the bad guy. I thought we'd end on this because you just keep doing good things and do it with a little bit of snark. Do it with a little bit of sense of humor. Do it with a little bit of knowledge of the culture game, kind of like putting up the pictures of all the convicted illegal felons at the White House. You could also do something like this. This is absolutely spectacular. Josh Hawley has just introduced the Preventing Elected Leaders from Owning Securities and Investments Act. And did you see what it is there? That's the Pelosi Act. Preventing P, elected E, leaders L, from owning O, securities S, and investments I, the Pelosi Act. That's how you punk them. That's how you nudge them. And by the way, at the same time, you're doing something right because Nancy Pelosi somehow trades above the market in extraordinary ways. How did she do it? How does she? For the children, that's how I do it. Thank you for watching the program. I hope you enjoyed it. My name's Dave Rubin. This is the Rubin Report. We've got a post-game show, rubinreport.locals.com. In just 30 seconds, I'll see you tomorrow.
It's time we impeach Donald J. Trump.